How do we fight back and regain control from our evil government? So I want to give a bit of background. There's so many things you might be aware of as a viewer, but let's talk about. We know that our governments are so corrupt that they, start wars around the world and terrible things are happening, and we're tired of it, right? We vote. We had like 1 million people go on the anti-Iraq war thing, and it still happened, right? The protest, right? But there's so many terrible things being done against poor people and bankers who, for example, caused the last financial crisis. They didn't pay for it at all. So there's so many problems that you could probably think of that we're not dealing with. And on the other side, we've got like China, which is a sort of a non-democratic country where they have so much oppression of the people that right now, just to thinking about modern problems at the moment, they're locking up their own citizens and they're barely getting enough food. All sorts of crazy problems. So how do we do that? How do we fight back against evil governments who are doing bad things, who are not in our favor? And so a quick answer would be, first of all, protests make the divisions in society grow. And I kind of rewind again, actually. One of the reasons why I picked this question is I got a text message or a WhatsApp message, and it said, you know what? There's these evil energy companies, turn off your power for 10 minutes at 10 o'clock at night or something, and we'll really show them, sort of thing, right? And so that's the kind of protest. And protest is what people think in the modern age is a solution. And I'm going to say how it's not. So back to the short answer. Protests make the divisions in society grow because they are playing the blame game. Unity takes daily small acts of kindness, nothing you can put on Instagram. So the point is, like, these are kind of things that are really difficult for the modern people because they need to show off about every tiny thing, like, oh, I'm eating this, here's a picture of my food, etc., right? So this is the kind of stuff where you've got to realize you cannot show off about it, and there is no finishing line either. It's not like I can stop being good today or something, or tomorrow. You have to just keep going, and only when you have unity can you choose good government. So kind of going back to the unity idea. So but that's not even my speech. Let me start my speech. That was a short version. Let me give the longer one. You don't want the toilet cleaner. Am I on the right bit? This is about, okay, I kind of mix up. There's a merger between what I would say democracy and how to handle division. But anyway, you don't want the toilet cleaner telling the government how to run the economy. So you do not want to control governments through protests or whatever you want. They are supposed to be experts, the government people, let's say. What you want are good people in power. If they are good, they will have the right policies. If they are bad, they will have all the right policies and not do them. We need a mind shift in how we think change will happen. Screaming that life isn't fair in a protest for a day is not how real change makers work. It's about small and positive actions every day. Only when we have unity will there be any change. So protesting against another part of society is not going to help. We need the other part on our side. Otherwise, corrupt governments will always play each side against the other. So until you make friends with your neighbor and slowly get to know them and see how important community is, or certainly get them to see how important community is, then you are the problem. Saying your neighbor isn't nice is the easiest way to give up any dream of a better world. So that's my little speech done. Any thoughts?
Well, governments try to do the best they can for their people, but there are different types of governing people, and democracy is one. It's not 100% good, doesn't work 100%, although America tries to import it by force into other countries and failed miserably. You have China, on the other front, as you mentioned. Uh, and China produced one of the most horrific incidences, Tiananmen Square. 100,000 people eventually got killed there, and they still prosecute. You mentioned that earlier. But they also do a lot of good. I mean, if you look at China, how many countries have they invaded or attacked?
None.
They haven't, right? So what they do is for their people. But America and the West tend to be the warmongers, and yet they are the Democrats. You know, the people who follow democracy. So neither is the solution because they're both extremes without any controls. What you really need is a government or system, because you have to put a system in. You can't have a leader who will listen to every single individual of his country to decide what he's going to do. It just won't work. You need a system. So what the best solution I've seen is a middle road of the two. The one extreme, like you got the socialist or communism, which is totally failure really, and Western, which is causing lots of wars and harm to a lot of people. Uh, in an Islamic system, for example, we have a leadership, and the leadership is elected democratically, and the purpose of that leader is to follow him and to obey him, but he holds counsel to listen to the people, not just to his policymakers, not just his cabinet, not just his close allies, but he listens to the people through there's an institution of consultations called Shura, where advice is given, and that Khalifa then makes a decision what his people want. He is a listening ear. Demonstrations themselves can be harmful, and they do not actually achieve anything. A demonstration doesn't necessarily change the view of the leaders. If they have a policy they want to stick on, no demonstration will change that. And you mentioned the Iraq War and 1 million people marching. Did they listen to anyone?
Not
No.
at all. No.
So it doesn't necessarily. It doesn't mean that demonstrations will work, because they say, well, in 4 years' time, change us. Don't vote for us. But in 4 years' time, lots of things can have happened, and the evil that are done. Look at the prime minister at the moment. Lies after lies. His cabinet are lying for him as well, and some have lied as well. And yet they're in power. And we just heard the policy they're making about what they're going to do to Rwandans and returning them, and the cost that's going to have on the earth. I mean, and yet people are outraged by these decisions, and yet he's in power. On those policies, and those policies aren't good policies. I can tell you that now.
Yeah.
And if anything, it is pandering to those people who don't have tolerance of others. Because
Yeah.
they have not been in that situation of being persecuted or in severe poverty where they run from and seek help from others. If people and we're in the month of Ramadan, what does Ramadan teach us? It teaches us to be empathetic to those people who have to fast every day of their lives, right? So that we become more empathetic to them. So when you are empathetic, you start listening to other people's causes. I think that's something that democracy sometimes doesn't encapsulate.
So I want to say a quick few words. Is I don't think that it's democracy. I'm going to mention this anyway in the next part, but it's not democracy or some other system that is key. It's the people who use it. It's like money. Money is not evil, but it can be used for evil. And I like the thing you mentioned about like the fasting and Ramadan, where communities, the whole community gets together and thinks about poorer people and gives money to poor people and fasts and gets healthy as well. So if you have that mindset, then we can start working towards a better world, because it's us. I love blaming us, not the other people, because the other people, let's say corrupt leaders, are a symptom of our own corruption. And if we make ourselves better, we're going to be happier for it. But anyway,